to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
I've been doing this podcast since September of 2012, and boy, are my lips tired.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And our friend Sam is unable to join us today. He had an extended work schedule that got in the way, so we'll be catching up with him next week. But I do have a guest joining me today. Her name is Kristin Jones, and she is all about emotional eating. And as I was telling you before we got started, Kristin, I'm dealing with some stuff in my own life right now. Mm-hmm. I'm eating lunch, a very, very late lunch, as we're recording this. That kind of qualifies. I mean, that it kind of slides under the back door, but it qualifies.
I would say if there was a component behind it that's causing you to be late, and I would say also just to monitor yourself while you're eating and just pay attention as to whether or not after you have your late lunch, whether or not you ate to satisfied or you ate to full and you overate. That will give you kind of an indication as to whether or not it was emotionally, whether there was an emotional component behind it.
There's a fine line there too.
Very fine.
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's a challenge just to identify where the line is. This the line over here? I think
right.
It might be. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And my clients, that's probably one of the main things that they struggle with is that line of when is the right place to stop and when do I go to overeating, and then what's behind that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. No, totally understand that. Well, let's get the background, because these kinds of programs don't get started without having some kind of impetus behind them. And that's what 10 years of doing the podcast has taught me.
Absolutely.
It's like it's the same story over and over again. Crash and burn, fly. Oh, I got to help everybody. This is so cool. Which is wonderful. I love that. It's a great theme. But here we're playing it once again. So how did your story play out?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. First off, thank you for having me on your show.
Pleasure.
I really appreciate it. So I have what I would say I am what I would call I'm a lifer. I'm a gold star emotional eater, meaning I have been an emotional eater for most of my life that I can remember. As early as 8, 9 years old, hiding food in my room. Definitely getting in trouble when I was young and being sent to my room and realizing that I wasn't allowed to say how I felt. In my home, I wasn't allowed to express myself, and I would get sent to my room. And if I'm going to be there by myself, I might as well keep myself company. So I would definitely always had food available to me. And then that just kind of moved. I grew up in a family that was my Nana and Papa were from the South. They were from Oklahoma, and food was a huge focus. Family get-togethers, family dinners, holidays were a huge focus in our family. And so very naturally, I associate so much of pleasurable experiences in my childhood being related to food. But I always remember, I think I was probably 18 or 19 before I ever attended a Thanksgiving, or I think I made Christmas that year, that I didn't walk away from Christmas feeling like I didn't need to eat for 5 days. Everything was very extreme in my family.
Wow.
Lots and lots of food. Mm-hmm. And I just always thought that I had just I would look at other people and I'd be like, gosh, like, how do they eat and how do they stop eating? Like, how do they eat and then stop and just kind of go on with their day? And me, I felt fixated by food. I felt like everything was one meal leading to the next, leading to my next snack, leading to, something late at night. And I just always knew that I had I nicely would call it funky, but it was dysfunctional, a very dysfunctional relationship with food. And that really, carried me through my majority of my adult life, my young life, as well as my adult life. And it probably wasn't until I was about 35 that I really came to the conclusion that, like, oh, this is an eating disorder. Like, oh, I really had never thought about it, that there was something abnormal to how I was I was, interacting with food and putting such a huge emphasis on food in my life. And so the first step was just acknowledging that, like, I think there's something wrong. I think I
Yeah,
have, I
good
think I
for
have an,
you.
yeah, I think I have an
I
eating
gotta say
disorder.
that. That's
Yeah.
that's not something everybody pulls off every day.
Yeah,
You did it.
no, I knew it. I knew it, but I will tell you that it took me another, 10 or 12 years to actually then get some help for it. But I did
Mm,
try. I
mhm,
went to 3 different therapists, and they were just, traditional therapists. They were wonderful. I learned something from each one of them, but they weren't they didn't understand the food part. They didn't understand the fixation on food, and how I was using food, and I didn't even know how I
mm,
was using food.
mm,
Um, but it was through working with a life coach. I started working with a life coach on an issue regarding money, and not allowing myself to let money come into my life. I was working. I had started an MLM, and so I was really having some real, challenges with that. So I saw this life coach, and she took me back and kind of had me look back on my childhood as to what my issues were with money and where they came from. And as we did all this work together, and it was really, really profound, and I really, I thought it was amazing. I realized, I thought, gosh, this totally applies to what I'm going through with my food. And I knew that I was aware enough. And then I started following some other life coaches, and became aware of the life coach school, which is out of Austin, Texas. And I decided that I wanted to become a life coach, and fully, I was not fully. Oh, I hadn't really even addressed my food issues, until I went to life coaching school, and this life coaching school was also had a weight loss component, and so I started learning about how my mind was control. It makes so much sense now, but I think most people don't really realize, except if they're law of attraction people, they don't understand the power of the
sure.
mind.
Oh yeah.
And so there's this disconnect, and most people who are carrying extra weight just feel like I have lack of self-discipline. I don't have any willpower. I need to watch what I eat and how much I exercise, and that's it. And that's why people get on this endless cycle, because they're not looking at what is actually behind why you're eating. It's really, I'm a believer. I don't endorse any dieting. I don't teach my clients to diet at all. But I do teach them how to lose weight. But I do that through not really pulling them away from dieting, because the dieting cycle is almost set up to um, create that cyclical, like, you'll be back, you'll lose your weight, and then you won't know why you actually got there in the first place. So we just go back to our old habits, and we just repeat the same thing over and over again. So I started realizing that I never really had I never had weight to lose. Mine was just all going on inside. Mine was, I had a very warped perception of myself, and so I thought I had weight to lose. And I realized that there was I knew there was an emotional component behind it, but it took kind of exposing myself to what we call thought work, and really looking at how your brain works, and how your thoughts are the dictators of everything that you're doing. And food obviously is no exception to that.
Yeah, no kidding. It's amazing too how everything that we ever talk about on the show always starts with mindset.
Oh, yeah.
I say amazing. It's not all that amazing after 1,800 episodes of it, but
Right.
but it's still amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, literally everything that we're trying to deal with in our lives, no matter what it is, starts with mindset. Starts and
Absolutely.
ends with mindset, really.
Right. And the interesting thing, what I've really noticed is, I've had my business. I was I'm formerly a middle school teacher. I taught English and history, and thought that I would do that for the rest of my career until I retired. And really realized that when I really started recognizing that I needed to start dealing with my own issues, I started realizing that I really wasn't, part of it was I wasn't happy with what I was doing. And so that was also driving the eating, because I wasn't happy. And I always tell one of my buzzwords with my buzz phrases with my clients is, when we're not happy, we don't make good decisions. So when we're internally not happy, we make impulsive decisions, and we just want instant gratification. I want to feel better right now, and I don't care what it takes to get that. And so really, my business did not start. I started off in the health and fitness, in the exercise and weight loss area of online training, and then really started through working with people and realizing what my own issue was. Really started to come up with what I knew I needed. Took myself through my own program, and then in turn wanted to share it with other people.
Which is the way it usually works.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you kind of. I hesitate to say that you contradicted yourself, because you didn't. You kind of skipped on something there. And what you skipped on was, how do I describe this? You skipped on any way that I say this, it comes out wrong. Let me try going another way.
I'm pretty tough.
I don't normally hesitate like this, but I basically backed myself into a corner. Let's try it another way. The way you were describing what you were running into, when you got to the point where you were describing what you realized about yourself, you stumbled through it. That's what I was trying to say. And how indicative is that? I mean, it's probably the most common reaction anybody has when they first encounter what one of their own issues is.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Yeah, 100%. Well, because it's also very difficult to look at. I think introspection is such a hard. It's very challenging for people, and it's scary. I mean, I know many people, many potential clients who will say, "I would really love to work with you, but I am afraid of what I'm going to find, and I don't want to, like, I don't think I'm ready." And I think being ready is a decision, and we could wait all our lives to be ready for something, but it's that fear of, like, there's going to be something that I'm going to tap into, and it's going to be too big for me to handle. And that's indicative of people who also don't understand how the mind works, and that we always get to control what's going on in here, not outside. Outside we have no control, but inside we do have the ability to be able to control our thoughts. And that's what I really try to help people come to terms with, and realize that, and then see how not only how it relates to their weight and their desire to lose weight, or their desire to manage their emotional eating, but it impacts, as you said, every aspect of your life. That the mindset piece is everywhere. And it's, once people start realizing it, that's when their lives really start to change, and they're able to have the lives that they really want.
In fact, I would point out that even those of us who do understand how the mind works, we still stumble on it. We still 100% have trouble with it.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
We may know what we're doing, but
yeah, no, knowledge does not necessarily equate application.
That's right.
So, yeah, it's challenging.
And that's the ongoing challenge, really. Because once you learn this stuff, then it's like, oh shit, now I got to apply this like every day.
Right. Well, and I'm sure you realize, and I know I've realized this, and I tell my clients this all the time. I said, half the things I say, and half the things that I will teach my clients about, and I'm sure for you, it's doing your podcast. We're actually doing it because we need to hear it too. Like, I need to hear the same stuff every day. I mean,
Absolutely.
People will say, like, "Oh, so you're past emotional eating?" I said, "Oh, no, I'm always going to be an emotional eater, and I work on it every single day, just like my clients. I'm just some steps ahead of them, but I know I've been where they've been, and when I come across something, in my own life, I really try and look at that and say, okay, how can I help apply this to the teachings that I do, and how to share this with my clients as well."
To borrow a rather macabre analogy, there's the analogy of what an entrepreneur is. The entrepreneur is somebody who can fall out of an airplane and assemble an airplane on the way down to the ground so you can fly away.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing applies here, except that in this case, it's the knowledgeable person, the enlightened person, they can also fall out of the airplane.
Oh, absolutely.
And then as they're falling out of the airplane, they can try to convince themselves to actually apply the stuff so that they can actually rise back up to the airplane.
Right.
It's the
Right.
same idea, really.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And so that's kind of I think it's one of the things that I think I try to do as best I can with my clients is help them see that this is it's my belief, and I know there are people who would disagree with me, but it's my belief that this will be something that I will always struggle with. I will always have to be aware of how I interact with food, from a mindset standpoint. And I've come to accept that. I fought it that's one of the reasons why I think I was so knee deep into things, is I fought the whole idea. I kept thinking, like, if I go to enough therapy, this is going to go away. And then I'm suddenly one morning going to wake up and everything's going to be great. And I'm going to be able to function totally normally with food. And that was what the frustration was. And I remember it was a therapist. She was my last therapist. And she, one day when I came in, and it was just, I'd had another binge the night before, and I came in and I was like, why does this keep happening? And I was in tears, and she just looked at me and she goes, oh, do you not know? And I'm like, what? And she said, you're always going to deal with this. And I was like, wait, I want all my money back. Wait a minute. What?
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute. We've been here a long time. But it was at first it really upset me, but it was amazing how, when I really thought about it, it gave me a sense of relief that I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was like, because I kept thinking, you need to get better at this. Like, you need to keep working harder because you haven't gotten past this. And when I realized that it was a part of me, and one thing she said to me was, she said, the more you fight that part of you, the more it's going to just rear its head, and you're going to be fighting against yourself. And she said, you're defeating yourself because you're so angry with this part of you. And she's like, that part of you needs to be loved. And that's a lot of what I help my clients do, is to rediscover themselves and rediscover a love for themselves that so many people who are overweight have such disdain and such dislike for themselves. And so that we've got to deal with that piece first.
There's an ironic part of that too. Well, at least from my perspective, I'm going to be curious to see what your perspective is. From my perspective, the irony is that piece, that resistant piece that says, I'm so angry that I have to keep dealing with this. Mm-hmm. The ironic part is, if we can finally come to peace with that, we can probably cut down or almost eliminate the number of times we actually have to struggle with the stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's a strange irony, really.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the interesting piece is that people don't realize, they think like, well, it takes a lot of work, and it's like, no, you just have to start changing your thoughts. Like, you just get to make that shift, and and things can start to happen. But I know I also make sure that clients know that your brain is a powerful machine, and it will keep throwing the same garbage thoughts back at you over and over. And that's because you've trained it to do that. And so I really work on a lot of, with my clients. A huge piece is really doing that reprogramming of your thoughts and reprogramming of your belief in yourself, your belief about your past, things that you have taken at face value that other people give you that's just not true, and it's not serving your life. So yeah, it's been incredibly eye-opening for me, just to be able to see the transformation that people make when they just realize, like, oh, I don't have to keep thinking that thought. Like, I can actually tell that thought that I don't want to think that anymore. And I can move to a different thought, and that I have some control over it. And I think that's the piece that I think when people realize that's an Oprah Winfrey aha moment that they just are, they're blown away by.
I find for myself that moment occurs, it recurs. It isn't just one time. Mm-hmm. It keeps coming back. And over time, I'm pretty sure what's been happening is I'm getting better at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we improve, we get better. We improve because of repetition of
Sure.
attempting to apply the skill,
Yeah.
or in many cases misapplying it and screwing up. But still, that's part of the whole game.
Right.
And by the same token, we are also very well trained at believing whatever it is that's going on. So the more that we have successes in terms of shifting our mindset, slowly over time, we actually start to believe it.
Right.
Which is kind of, I mean, it's so obvious to say it, but to experience it, it's like, wow, I think I really am beginning to believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when it's something, when you have no proof and you have you just have to kind of be going by faith, and it's like, oh wow, okay, that's so counter to what we've all been taught, that like, okay, if you're going to believe something, you have to have, there have to be facts, and there has to be truth, and there has to be, precedence, and so it's so interesting that we can convince our minds of something that in reality hasn't happened yet, or we can take on a quality that we wish we had, that all of a sudden we start believing that we actually have it, and we do, and it's pretty exciting for people when they realize it, but it is a lot. It's work. I mean, it's a commitment.
Yeah. It's working. It's working. It's not work. That I think is probably the biggest dichotomy of them all. Because the work part is that you're trying to talk yourself into doing it. The actual doing part isn't all that much work.
No, and it's that commitment and the consistency. I always say that it's time, it's patience, and it's consistency. Those three things, like if you want to make any change in your life, whatever it is, those three things have to be present. And it's the consistency piece. That's probably the thing that people get frustrated the most with, is it's like, why can't I be consistent? Like I can't stay, I just can't stay, I can't stay motivated. I can't stay, because again, they want, and so much of it also is people they want their results yesterday. And so, they want to know that, okay, there's a guarantee, like I'm for sure going to get past this. And I'm like, well, yeah, I always tell people, I will lay out exactly what you need to do, but I can't do it for you.
So where do you sit on the discussion about words versus vibration? And what I mean by that is, there are many people who will argue you want to make sure that you're very careful about the wording that you use. So you don't want to keep saying to yourself, well, I can't make the mind shift, or I always lose whenever I do this, because you're talking yourself out of it. But by the same token, there's also the idea that really it's the vibration behind it. So if you could say that and actually feel great about it, it would probably work out okay, but most people can't do that.
Oh, okay. So having your frequency be high, but your internal, your body vibration is different than the thoughts that you're actually having.
Right. So for instance, there are a couple ways you can say, I feel depressed. You can say, oh, I feel so depressed. Or you can say, I feel depressed. Which it's like, on the one hand, you're talking yourself into something. On the other hand, I'm really feeling it. And now there's like a push me, pull you going on there.
Interesting. So part of my my teaching career was I have a master's degree in special education, and I was a resource specialist, and I worked with a wide variety of students who had learning disabilities. And one of the things that I think I realized, working in that environment, in that arena, and it transferred really naturally to what I do now, is the power of words. And I think, and to me, it's the power of words that are being repeated inside your head. That to me, I think, because I think even if you had that energy, like that to me is that fake it till you make it kind of thing. And I think words behind it, and what you're saying, the words behind not only what you're thinking, but what you're saying to yourself, what you're saying aloud about yourself to other people. But I think the more damaging stuff is the things we say internally to ourselves. So I'm going to be on team words. That's where I'm going to have to fall on it. Because I think that, and again, being an English teacher, I think words just have such a powerful impact, and can be used, like a sword sometimes. So, and sometimes and so many people use them against themselves. When I ask, clients probably or potential clients. I have a pretty large Facebook group, and if I put something out there about self-talk, like people have no problem identifying like my self-talk is horrible, and they will openly own, and they will say, and I don't know what to do about it. Like I don't know how to stop it, which I understand.
Sure. Yeah, I understand that too. The other piece of the puzzle from my perspective, I'm going to quote a good friend of mine who's a former co-host. Her name is Cindy Chavez. Listeners will recognize her, of course. And Cindy likes to say that regardless of what you're trying to feel, or regardless of what your words are saying, the universe always knows where you're vibrating.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah.
the bottom line is, you can't fake the universe out. It's not possible to do that.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point. But I always feel that the words often will. So the way I see it is that our thoughts create our energy, our feelings, our emotions, and emotion is a vibration in your body. So your thoughts create your emotions, and then your emotions are what drive the actions that you take. And then the actions then the actions, whatever you're doing for actions, that's going to get you the result that you either want or don't want. And so oftentimes people want to go right back and just start changing the action, instead of going back to, well, wait a minute, what was the thought that was generating that thoughts that then were creating the feeling, and the feeling being the vibration that drives the energy. So no, they all, again, thoughts are just words in your head too. So
they are indeed. Yeah. Especially since you have, I don't know how many different languages, a few hundred languages here on the planet, each with its own word for ball or whatever the word is. And, it just complicates the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think that's why I totally get what you were saying. And I think there's a lot of validity to what you were saying in terms of being on the side of the words. But I also think there's validity to the vibration side, because you can't fake out the universe. To me, that's like the final word on it. So I can try to use it a little differently. I could try it, but I really got to feel it. I got to feel it. And I remember the first time that I experimented with trying to feel something different from the default feeling. By the default feeling, I mean the one that we kind of expected in whatever that situation was. And it was an experiment because I'd been doing the podcast for a few years at that point, and I'd had the concept explained to me by guests and co-hosts. I believed it intellectually, but experientially, I thought it was a bunch of rubbish. Because my experience was, no, I can't do that. And then I remember the first time that I actually succeeded in shifting my emotion, my genuine emotional response. It wasn't even word based; it was just shifting an emotional response. I was astonished. I was literally shocked out of my skin. I couldn't believe that you could actually do that.
Right.
And it was a breakthrough moment for that reason, because oh wow, that raised all kinds of possibilities. Now since then, I've also learned what so many people learn, that just because you found that you can do it doesn't mean you can always do it.
Right.
It can be a shift challenge.
Yeah, and you can get caught up in the moment and the emotion of the moment, and your brain intellectually knows it, but your heart is going off in 15 different directions, and you can't rein it back in to be able to, it's just, there's almost like everything's happening in warp speed, and you can't slow it down enough to be able to catch it.
And that to me is another part of what we're calling work, because in that instance, the work is kind of stopping for a moment, taking a breath, and separating it all out, so you know exactly what you're dealing with, instead of just staying stuck in that track. But it's a challenge to do even that.
Yeah.
I mean, that can be just hard to do. And I think that when people say that they can't seem to make the change, or they can't change their thoughts, or whatever it is, I think that's really what's at the root of it. On the one hand, we know what the goal is. On the other hand, sometimes we can get there, sometimes we can't. And then we hear, well, we're not supposed to beat ourselves up about it. Okay, so what am I supposed to do?
Right, exactly. You're right, because there does come a point in time where there does, and again, we were talking about those fine lines. It's like there's that fine line of how much am I beating myself up, or am I just calling myself out and saying, come on, suck it up. Like, we need to, like, this is important. We need to focus in and do this. And I feel like and I have to kind of walk that line with my clients of always, always encourage, never wanting them to feel shame towards themselves or disappointment. But at the same time, if we keep doing the same thing over and over and over, then it's like, okay, we got at some point, who's responsible? Well, ultimately it's always going to be you. So that means you need to have a talk with you about the choices that you're making.
So let's look at how we make that shift, how we have that talk.
Mm-hmm.
And let's look at it from the perspective of how what is the most effective way to give ourselves that talk. Is it literally just having a conversation with us? I mean, there are lots of different processes that people have developed over the
Right.
years, and there are more of them being developed every single day, and some pretty cool ones as well. Some of them
Right.
are much more direct; they go right at the heart of it. Some of them go more indirect. They go through meditation and a variety of other different practices.
Mm-hmm.
They're all great. But when you work with a client, how do you go about it? Are you more direct with them? Are you more indirect? What do you do?
Well, and it's my belief that everyone's answers are inside of them. And it's not my job to give anybody the answer. It's my
Okay.
job to help them access the answer that's within themselves. But when it comes to, like those thoughts and then, I mean, we always go back to, and my clients will laugh about it because they'll say, we'll be talking about, food, or they'll be talking about, like, I haven't lost weight. I'm in a plateau. I haven't lost weight for a certain amount of time. They all now know if they have a meeting with me, I do not want to hear about their food. I don't want to hear about what they're eating. I don't care about what they're eating. What I care about is, what are you thinking? Like, let's go back to, are you doing your affirmations? Are you doing your gratitude every morning? I have my clients kind of do a little morning routine.
Mm-hmm.
And are you planning your meals for the day? Are you taking control of what's happening in your life? And or are you kind of like letting it go and then expecting to get the results that you want when you're not actually like doing the work? You're not actually doing what's going to kind of guide you towards what it is that you want to have. And so I put it back on them. I mean, I just say, like, so tell me what you're doing. Like, tell me what your routine is. Like, how is everything going? Are you? And usually the first question I ask is like, so you're doing your affirmations? And then usually that's the head down. I know. Well, then maybe I've been doing them, but it's amazing when then they make that shift of like, okay, I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna try this. And then they start seeing the results from it. And then it's like they're the ones that I just say, we'll be in a meeting and I'll just say, okay, so can you tell everybody what you did the other day about, your affirmations and how that has suddenly changed everything. And I let them teach each other. It doesn't necessarily need to come from me. It needs to come from their own success and what they've realized and kind of what they've discovered. So I try to have them come up with what their solution needs to be. And they do, because usually that first question is the one that opens the door, and they're like, yeah, no, I've really been thinking badly about myself. I've really been having negative thoughts. And then, okay, so what do we need to work on with that? How do you need to kind of redirect yourself? Then we just talk about things that I've taught them, and they get back on the horse and get back to it.
We are evidence gatherers, and I think to your point that it's so valuable to learn it from each other. What we're really learning from each other, whether it's in a group situation like that or in any other situation in life, what we're really learning is, here's another person who has an example of how they made a shift and made a difference.
Yep.
And we gather enough of that evidence, and it's going to be a different amount for every person, but at some point we start to believe the evidence.
Yep, exactly. And that's I think the cool part is when other people are able to share, one, because and I think the power of a community, especially when you're dealing with something that kind of is something that ties so many people together, which would be, which would be an issue with weight or an issue with food. It ties so many people together, yet it's so incredibly isolating, and people are so embarrassed, and there's so much shame and there's so much guilt associated with it that people don't say anything, even though there's physical evidence of that they're having an issue with it. They don't want to talk about it because they feel like they're the only person that's ever dealt with this. And when they come into the group and they realize, oh my gosh, like like other people get me, like they understand,
Mhm.
and there's that connection. And that's what I feel like. That's when I feel like the most learning happens, is when they realize that they can learn from other people, and that other people can learn from them as well. And so there's power, there's just power when people, and I deal exclusively with women, and so when women come together, it can be, it's amazingly supportive and really really encouraging for them.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Well, I often like to talk about how I believe there are two factors that pretty much drive the the question of whether someone's going to be successful with whatever it is. Fill it in the
Hmm.
blank. I don't care
Hmm.
what it is.
Hmm.
And those two factors are self-confidence and social connectedness.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about there is the power of the second part, the social
Hmm.
connectedness,
Hmm.
and how it actually feeds the first part, the building of the
Yeah.
self-confidence.
Yeah, I was going to say this, and I think the hardest, probably one of the hardest things for people to grasp is that is having that self-confidence without, like, without proof. Like, well,
Mhm.
why should I believe, why should I believe I can do this, because I haven't done it before. And it's that piece of faith that you have to bring in. And that can be that, it's kind of new and shiny in the beginning, and then it's kind of a little harder to wrap your head around when things don't happen right away, when you don't get those results that you want right away. And it's just, again, I think faith has a huge piece in it, that we have to just we're it's like, it's like they want someone to be qualified for a job, and somebody has all, they have the qualifications, but they've not had any experience. It's like, well, who's going to give them experience? They're never going to get it. If
Mhm.
you're never going to get it unless somebody takes a chance on you. And it's the same thing with us. We have to take a chance on ourselves.
Yeah, very true. But what you're describing there about the faith reminds me of the Abraham Hicks definition of belief. I
Hmm.
remember the first time I heard that definition, boy, did that, first it snapped some synapses, but after that, it also filled in some gaps like, oh, wow, yeah, that makes so
Hmm.
much sense to me. Because their
Hmm.
definition is that a belief is a thought that you think over and over again.
Yeah. 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 And so it can go either direction. And
Hmm.
it's all, and it's funny because when I work with somebody new, and they come to the realization as we're talking, they'll almost always come to that realization of, like, so are you saying that, like, I'm here because of me? Like,
What a
I've done
shock
this,
that is.
I've done this to myself. And I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
at first they're almost kind of offended, like, like, who do you think you are? And then I always have to come back with, but the best part is that you can change it right
Mm,
now. Like, it can
mhm.
change in an instant, and you don't have to wait for anybody. You're not waiting for anybody to give you permission, or for somebody to come in and save the day. You are your own savior. You get to decide. You brought it upon yourself, and now you get to change it.
And let's be honest, it's overwhelming. I mean,
Oh
when, when
yeah.
when you're faced with that realization that, oh my God, I attracted this, I brought this on myself.
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I remember that's something else. I remember the first time that I experienced that, and that's when the enormity of the
Yeah.
project being make myself into the person I want to be.
Mhm.
The enormity of it just hit me like, oh
Yeah.
my God,
Yeah.
this is massive.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because
And I'm going to let you address that while I let my cat in. So I'll be right back. He says, I want to come in too. I want to be part of the conversation.
Oh, our animals are so important to us. I have my dog outside, so he wasn't gonna be able to interrupt me.
Well, mine's going to be able to interrupt me because I went to let him in and he ran away. So,
Oh,
yeah,
that's a cat for you.
that is a cat for you. Yes. Well, actually, he's tied in. I can't tell the whole story, but he's actually part of that emotional thing I was talking about before.
Oh, okay.
He plays a role in that one, and
Yeah.
he doesn't know it, but he's about to go through a similar kind of thing for himself.
Mhm,
He's
mhm,
actually going to be dealing with an emotional shift that it's actually going to work out very well for him. The
mm,
situation is going to be really good for him.
mhm.
He's going to love the result, but I think he's already sensing it because animals are pretty
Oh, yeah.
intuitive. you know,
Well, and
like something has already changed and he doesn't know what it is, but he can tell.
yeah, and I think what you're saying, and this is I've been having a lot of conversations with people about this, about the whole idea of people. It's not that people don't like change, they don't like the transition. They don't like
Yes.
the process. Like the
Yes.
process of like on the other side, it's phenomenal. But it's like it's as somebody described it to me, it's like being pulled backwards through a keyhole. It's like you just like
Good description. Yeah.
it's so it's so uncomfortable,
Mm.
but yet it's like if I can just hold on, if I can just hold on and get right. And I always tell people, like, it's that moment, it's when you feel like this couldn't get any, like I couldn't feel any worse, and this can't get any, it can't go any more downhill from here. And I always just say, God, hold on, because there's a corner, and right around the corner there's something phenomenal. You just got to hang in there. You just have to get to that place. But it's so easy for people to just say, like, no, I can't do this. It's too hard.
I already alluded to this thing that I've been dealing with. It's part of a very large picture thing that I have not discussed yet on the podcast. And probably won't for a few weeks because it's still playing out.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that this whole current experience is reminding me of is an experience that my wife and I experienced. Let's see, it would be 8 years ago. At the time, we were living in Virginia, and we were originally from New England. And Louise came to me and said, "I want to move back to Connecticut." And I said, "Okay," but we were in really bad financial straits at the time, and there were a whole bunch of other issues that were happening as well. We had 2 vehicles, but neither one of them could make the trip. We didn't have money to hire the moving van. We had 4 cats, not one. Or 2 cats. We had 4 cats that we're trying to deal with. We had, and they were all foundlings. They had been abandoned by people who lived across the street from us, and we adopted them, but we couldn't take them all with us. I mean, there was like this endless series of things that were it's like everything was falling apart. But somehow we needed to make this transition to be able to move north.
Right.
And we both knew enough about law of attraction to say, okay, well, we have no idea how to make this work. So we're just going to trust, because literally there was nothing else to do. There were no other options at that point.
Right.
So we just, okay, we'll just trust. And I actually wrote it out as a story, and everything literally fell into place. But it fell into place in the craziest ways you could possibly imagine. Last second things happening, one after another, and which, by the way, is emotionally exhausting. But it was happening that way. And it literally everything worked out. As we look back, well, Louise won't even look at it anymore because it was such a painful period to go through. But I can look back at it, and I can see how everything worked out, and I can see what's going on right now and say, my God, it's the exact same experience again. I mean, it's not the same fundamental things that happen, but it's the same emotional experience going on, because I have all these things that are up in the air right now, and I can now see how they could start falling into place.
Right.
But that gives me no solace whatsoever, because they haven't fallen into place.
Right.
So I have the knowledge. I have a certain tiny, mustard seed amount of faith. That's about it, and now I'm living it.
Yeah.
And that's crazy making.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's also bravery making too.
Well, it's both. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's showing you that in spite of your feelings and your thoughts, you're overcoming those and doing it anyway.
And the evidence of that is, I went through it once before. I had the result that actually gave me the bravery to use this time around.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's not inconsequential. That's pretty big. That's actually making the situation that I'm in right now tolerable.
Right. Well, one of the things that I oftentimes do with clients when I'm coaching is I'll have them like just get out a piece of paper, and I'll just say, okay, write down, you have 2 minutes, like write down every single goal that you've ever attained. And they're like, I can't think of it. And I'm like, okay, did you get a driver's license? Yes. Did you graduate from high school? Yes. Did you go to college? Yes. Did you? And so we start going through, and they start, and I said, pick out the things that you think are really significant. So they start listing these things, and all of a sudden, and so I take them through this process of like, okay, so now you have, pick your top two. And then I ask them, I'm like, well, how do you feel when you look at your list? Like, how does that make you feel? And they're like,
Mm,
well, gosh, I'm just like, I can't, I had forgotten I forgot
right.
how powerful I was. I forgot what I could do. And I said, right,
Yes.
that you need to have that list like tattooed to your forehead. And so you just need, but you have to, we're so quick because of how our brain works. We're so quick to look at what we don't have, or to look and to go into scarcity, or to look at what we all the negatives. And again, our brain is always going to go to the negative because it's thinking it's preparing us for the worst case scenario. So but it's recognizing that we don't have to do that. It doesn't have to be that way. You can make those shifts, or not, but that you have the option of doing that. And I think that's another really powerful thing for people to remember.
And the dynamic of going through an experience like the one I'm going through right now is that we do both.
Mhm.
We avoid doing the work and we do the work. Or I'll put it in the first person. I often avoid doing the work, or I often do the work. And the
Mhm.
times
Mhm.
that I avoid doing the work, my day gets miserable. And the times that I do the work, my day gets better. And it
Right.
doesn't matter what's been going on. That rule holds true,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
also has a certain degree of solace. Like, oh, okay, this stuff works. That's
Yeah.
good. I can
Yeah.
count on it. I can trust
Mhm.
it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, but what I find to be so interesting is that, like, we're in the minority, because there's just such there's a hu- just
Oh
it's
yeah.
such a vast amount of people who have, like, if you said law of attraction, they'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, they have
Mhm.
no clue. LOA, what do you mean? Abraham Hicks, what? Any of those, even gratitude, or like, why would you be grateful for anything, or affirmations, or any of those types of things. It's just, it's just amazing how many people have, like, just don't know that there's even hope out there. And I think that's what I feel like there's such a need for that, because I think it really would change. I believe that it really would change the world if people were more connected with their own power, as opposed to trying to diminish other people's power. Like, just try to drive your own.
I actually think that it's already happening, although if we're looking for it to happen in the aggregate, we're going to probably have to wait to see it in the aggregate.
Mhm.
But, well, partly from doing a show like this, I see it all the time just from talking to good people like you. But I also see it in just, interactions with society. I see elements of what we talk about showing up here
Mhm.
and there.
Mhm.
This past year here on the podcast, I'm going to guess, I haven't counted them up, maybe 8 or 10 doctors on. I've
Yeah.
never had anywhere near that amount in the
Right.
past. But this year,
Right.
8 to 10 doctors, and each one of them comes on and they talk about some element of what we talk about. And
Mhm.
I think, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
a few of them have heard of law of attraction. A lot of them haven't, or if they've heard
Mhm.
of it, they like, oh, is that like how you meet somebody? It's that level of
Mhm.
understanding for some of them. But the bottom line is they're all doing something that's along the line of what we're talking about. So, for
Mhm.
instance, they may be doing journaling,
Right.
or they may be doing affirmations,
Mhm.
or they may be doing meditation. A lot of doctors are all pushing. It's amazing how many doctors are pushing meditation these days.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mainstream doctors are
Right.
pushing meditation. Like,
Yeah.
whoa, this is
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we may not be seeing in the aggregate massive change going on, but boy, it's so easy to see it happening a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit
Right.
there.
Right. Well, and I think it's I think that's where social media can be a positive thing, or
Yeah, sure.
because it gets that word out there. People are able to, kind of anonymously, go into a Facebook group, join a Facebook group, and not feel threatened, and kind of learn things that they might not, maybe no one else in their friend circle, or in their family knows anything about that, but they can go online and start
Yeah.
learning stuff. And that can be really empowering as well.
And the online tool, oh my goodness. I don't think there's any way to overstate how big that is, how
Oh,
important that is.
absolutely. And I know it was big. I left teaching in 2017. And so I was 3 years in, just almost 3 years in when COVID happened. And we were already, I was already positioned. I was doing some business coaching at that time, for online, for online coaches.
Mhm.
And we were in the perfect position to be able to, like, because everybody came online. That was just, and
Yeah.
that's one thing that I think has been, um, what I've seen as a positive,
Oh yeah.
as a result of COVID. Is just the availability of being able to connect, like really legitimately connect with people that are not within your, not within your area. Um, I've been teaching a class in, I live in California, and I've been teaching an adult education class in Brookline, Massachusetts, and
Oh, cool.
on emotional eating. And so it's, I would never have had that opportunity ever.
Mm.
And it's been amazing. So it's the ability for us to be able to have that. But interestingly enough, I just was hearing this the other day, that since, post COVID, they've noticed that there are, when it comes to, just because there's so many courses and opportunities and coaching and things that are available online, but there's almost kind of this backlash now that people want to be in person. And
Yeah, right.
they don't
Oh,
want,
yeah.
like, they don't want to go on to a pre-recorded webinar. They want to have somebody live there. If somebody's going to talk to them
Yeah.
about something, they want to be live with them, and have that opportunity to actually ask a question and have the person answer it and use their name. And so it's really interesting. It makes the online space. It's kind of been this shift that online marketers, or online entrepreneurs like myself, have to kind of go with, in the way of trying to connect with people as much as possible and make it as real as possible.
Yeah, the negatives associated with COVID are obvious. What is less obvious, but you have to look for it. But if you look for it, you'll find a lot of it are the
Oh,
positives. There are huge numbers of positives. You
yeah,
identified a couple of really good ones. The
yeah,
fact that we were able to connect in ways that we were never able to connect before. That's gigantic. That
yeah.
enabled people, despite the fact that they were in quarantine, they could talk to their family, they could talk to their friends.
Right.
That was
And
gigantic.
yeah, and how many people were able to learn a skill, take a
Right?
course online because they
Yeah.
had nothing but time on their hands, and so they learned how to speak Italian, or they learned
Hmm.
how to, paint, paint like Bob Ross, or whatever. There's so much that came out of that I think, again, and it's just, the dissemination of information, just getting information out there to people. And I think people learned, people were given an opportunity. And I think a lot of people really took that opportunity to be able to learn as much as they can, which, and again, having been a former educator, it's like, education is power. So,
Hmm.
just having that is so valuable and can take people so far. So,
And then you have the ability to not just go online and interact with people, but also to work online. I mean,
mhm.
it's now gotten to the point where more and more companies are finding themselves being forced to offer remote work opportunities because
Absolutely.
now people have discovered, whoa, I like this work at home thing. Yeah, I was forced to do it during COVID, but
Right.
ooh, I like this. And
Oh,
by the
yeah.
same token, there are also people who are saying, I really miss the interaction. I want to go
Mhm.
work. So you're getting both going on.
Yeah, yeah. And I know at least, I know two people in my family that are living in other states from where their jobs
Hmm.
were prior to COVID, or got new jobs, but the company is like here in California and they're in Arizona, or they're in Wyoming, or they're in, Colorado, wherever it may be. And but they're still able to have that position. They're able to have that position and be able to, have, again, function within their job, in a completely virtual space.
So we take all these different things, and we've just identified a few. There are actually more good things that came out of that whole
Hmm.
pandemic period. But just by identifying the ones we've identified, now let's take it back to what we were originally talking about: people
Hmm.
dealing with emotional eating,
Hmm.
overeating, all the different labels that you can apply
Right.
to it. Now look what has happened with what when you bring people into a virtual space. And now
Yep.
you're able to work with people in a virtual space. I mean, I'm sure that has been a huge portion of your business.
Oh,
I know it's been
absolutely.
true for a lot of life coaches. I
Hmm.
mean, this has truly transformed and revolutionized the opportunity and the ability of people to make these major changes in their lives right from their homes.
Right, exactly. And I think what and it's the connectedness. I find the thing that really for my clients, and for not only for the women, I have a free Facebook group that has about 6,500 people in it, and then I have a private membership which has about 70 people in it, and and I see it true in both instances. The connections that people create and have with other people in their group who are sharing a similar thread that ties them all together. Those connections, I mean, I will have people say, like, I don't talk to anybody about this, and here I am talking to you all, and I don't, I know your first and last name and that's it. Like, I don't
Yeah,
know
right.
anything else about your life.
Right.
I probably will never meet you in person, but here, let me bare my soul and tell you about my trauma when I was 5 years old. I mean, it's
Right.
pretty amazing. And then you have four other people saying, "Oh, that happened to me too. Oh yeah, that
Yes.
same thing happened." And then it's just like they're bonded and they're connected, and then they don't want to let that go.
Sure, because once
Yeah.
you get a good bond like that going, who would want to let it go?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No, we have ladies all the time that are, talking of, there's, a bunch of ladies, who are in and around the New York, New Jersey area. And they're like, oh, we got it. Some people are on Long Island, some people are on the Jersey Shore. And so, they're like, okay, well, we got to connect and we got to have a meetup. And so and that's, I love that as a facilitator of that. I love when that happens, because I think those connections and that bringing together of humanity is just, it's such a beautiful thing, and it's so wonderful for people who might not ever be able to experience people that are so different than them, yet they find something so real that they can connect with.
Which is terrific. Now, you actually have a couple of offerings that I think we need to touch on. First of all, there's your free offering that you call Food Freedom, appropriate. That is called Food Freedom.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then you have a membership program, Breakthrough Membership. Tell us about those two elements.
Absolutely. So the free video course, which is a 4-part video series on just on some of the very most basic. I teach probably 3 or 4 very basic components of my program that I feel are really appropriate for people who are looking to manage their emotional eating, and lose weight. Or you don't need to lose weight. You don't necessarily need to have weight to lose in order to go through the process and understand. I have a lot of people, and this was my case, is that have food is a very strong and very essential part of their lives, but they've been able to manage it. So it doesn't present itself as it being a physical problem, but they know that they are not in control of their lives. That food is a heavy dictator of what they do on a daily basis. And then there are people who have, anywhere, I can have anywhere from, 10 pounds to 150 pounds to lose. And so the 4-part video series just kind of presents the what I consider kind of the foundational pieces, and gets people started in moving in the right direction. It addresses, again, it always addresses the why behind what you're eating. I always tell people, I don't care what you eat. I care why you're eating. I care what's that feeling that you're trying to avoid, or you're trying to distract from, or you're trying to get rid of, that you are finding yourself, in the pantry when you're not hungry, eating when you're not hungry. That's probably the most common thing that people do.
Now, do you also enter the anorexia bulimia space? Because that's another kind of food issue, but it's a food issue where you're not taking nutrition.
Right. No, I do not. I definitely know. I stay in my lane, and I know where my area. I know where my area of, and not to say that I have not had issues with that as well, but I don't feel equipped. I feel like that's the one thing, and that's one thing I really respect about my life coaching school that I went to, is we're very clear on what falls under something that I can address, and what needs to be referred to a therapist. I have definitely met with people that I have told, like, this is more along the lines of you need to be seeing a therapist for this. I'm not qualified to be doing that. And so I'm pretty honest. I try to be as honest, and I really want people to get the help that they need. So so that 4-part video series really gets people started on kind of looking at and understanding how their brain works and how their mind works and how all of those things kind of come together. And it's all the stuff that happens before you put anything in your mouth. That's what we really need to be coming really, really crystal clear on. And so that's one piece. And then I have a membership for those people who experience that and then feel like, okay, I want to go deeper into this, because so much of emotional eating has to do with limiting beliefs that people have been given that they don't even question. They just take on as their own. And it's really about, figuring out, like, what are the beliefs that you were given as a child, and which ones are working and which ones are not working. And then let's decide, like, if that's not working, we need to, you can change that. And most people don't even have any idea that that there's even an option, that they get to choose, like, whether or not that's a belief I keep. They just think, well, it's a belief. It's what my brain tells me. So if my brain tells me that, it has to be true and I have to listen to it. And so letting people know that that's not, that they have options and that they get to expand upon that. And so the membership is really going a little bit deeper into, how to process emotion, as opposed to just reacting, but how to process. And then there are very much nuts and bolts of, how to, when people who chronically overeat, it's like, we have to, I teach them, like, how do you go into a meal? Well, you don't go into a meal after being upset, which you and I talked about before the show. You don't start eating when you have something emotional that you really, that's going to impact you. It's like, if you're in any way concerned about your weight, or you feel like you already have an issue, it's like, okay, we need to recognize, okay, when's that happening, and what do we need to do to address that prior to us eating? And really, for a lot of people, it's even recognizing, when am I actually eating because I'm hungry, and when is it an emotional response, and differentiating those things.
Yeah, that's that fine line we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, exactly. So, the membership is really, again, and that's where the connections happen for the ladies. And I always, and my members know this, is I feel like I bring them in for weight loss. I bring them in because of weight loss and because of the emotional eating piece. But what I really want people who come into my membership to get out of it is a belief, a very, very core belief in themselves, and that there is nothing that they can't have in their lives, and there's nothing that they can create the life that they want, and they do not have to settle for how they've lived their lives thus far, that they get to make a choice, and they make that choice every single day, and that there's no limits. And I don't think enough people know that. I don't think enough people know that there are that you can do whatever you want. And that's why I left teaching, and it because I read a very powerful book that introduced that to me, and I was just like, I was blown away. I thought, okay, well, this is what I got. This is where I need to. This is the direction I need to be going in.
Well, I'm glad you discovered your direction and decided to share it with the world, because
Yeah,
clearly you know your subject. There's no doubt about that. Absolutely,
well,
no doubt whatsoever. Couple things we need from you before we part company. First,
absolutely,
you have this wonderful free video series, and you've got the Breakthrough membership series, but we got to tell people how to find them.
Absolutely. So you can go to my two options. You can go to my website, and that is KristinJonesCoaching.com. And as well as, I have a free Facebook group. It's called Breakthrough Emotional Eating. And if you go to Facebook and you just put in the search bar Breakthrough Emotional Eating, or even Emotional Eating, my group will come up. But I can drop the address, because I do know it offhand. So it's www.facebook.com/groups/food breakthrough. And you can join the free group. I give all sorts of stuff away, and really try to set anyone up who comes in with a lot of basic beginning steps of how you can how to start looking at your thinking, and how to start recognizing the patterns that that you're following that are not working for you. And so doing all, really those two ways, either through my website or through the Breakthrough Emotional Eating community on Facebook, are two great ways to locate me.
That's fabulous.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, there's one more thing I have to do before we're done for the day,
Mhm.
and I make this a standard practice because I have so many good people on like yourself who are doing so much to give to many people.
Mhm.
Because there are many people who you'll never meet and you'll never see who perhaps saw you on this podcast, or they saw
Right.
you on another podcast, or they took the video course and they loved the course and then they
Mhm.
moved on, and
Mhm.
or maybe they did join the group but they lurked and they didn't really do anything.
Right.
There's like this endless list of people
Mhm.
who you'll never meet, who you'll never see, but you touch their lives and you help them in some way.
Right.
And
Mhm.
I think it's important to recognize that. So
Mhm.
on their behalf, I want to thank you for the
Oh,
work you've been doing to
thanks.
help people that you'll never meet and never see, and that you're
Mhm.
continuing to do going forward, because
Right.
it's a great thing. So thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I really, I recognized a long time ago. I was a victim for a long time in my life, and I was very upset about why I was given this, or why, why this was done to me, that I had this problem with eating. And then I finally realized, no, it wasn't done to me, it was done for me. And that I then decided that it was my responsibility, that I had a responsibility to be able to not only take care of myself, but then share what I learned with other people. And so it's the thing that drives me. It's what I'm passionate about. And it's how I know why I'm here, and this is it.
Absolutely fabulous. Kristin, thanks so much.
Thank
Appreciate you being
you.
on the
Thank
show
you so
today.
much. It was
This has been
great time. I appreciate it.
And we'll make sure that we'll include a show note link to KristinJonesCoaching.com so they can find it really
Perfect.
easily.
All right.
So thank you very much. Thank
That
you to
sounds
our
great.
podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.